Working. Okay, cool. Welcome to Magic Sessions on Tuesdays. It's my show, ta-da, where I talk about all things vocal and things that I'm excited about this week, and answer any questions that you have, because that's what I'm here for, to help be your vocal fairy godmother, as I like to call myself. And it's really fun doing these and just kind of seeing what happens, seeing what comes up. Something I've been working on a lot with people this week is last week I was talking about genre switching and the shape that things take physically in your body, and what I like to call my 3D palette around my head, that kind of feels like a visual representation of all of the registered switching and the tone switching and the power shifts that we do all the time naturally in our speaking voice. But a lot of times voice teachers will put words and terms on them that can change from voice teacher to voice teacher, and it can get really confusing. And so I like to kind of make it a visual thing, because that is a much more universal but also personal way of seeing it. Like, you can know what placement means, but until you feel it within your body, you're not really going to feel what your teacher's talking about. So hopefully that's helpful. But this week, I've been talking a lot about how to just create space in general, not necessarily for the specific genre you're doing, but just to release all of this. So the space kind of acts as not necessarily a thing that is needed for every note ever, but it creates a trigger for your body. So when you open up your mouth, like to do an ah, there can still be a little bit of tension in there when we go ah, ah. Especially American English speakers, we tend to go ah, and we create more tension back here. And different vowels, of course, have different tension levels. Like ooh, we can overuse our jaw here, and e, we really tighten up, and you can see that tightening in my neck too. So it's all connected. So if we don't realize where the tension is coming from, it can feel like just the note is hard. Like if we're singing a high note, we can just blame it on the high note instead of I didn't create enough space for that high note. And so we're thinking about how to create space in our entire body, not just in this little section right here. Although this is really important, and a lot of us have way more tension and subconscious habits to create tension than we even realize. So it's really good to start here, but also start from the whole body at the same time. So I've been doing this on my own for a long time, but I've been through reading books and through watching the work of other teachers, I've been looking more into a holistic way of holding our bodies when we sing. And even I'm doing a bad job of it right now. Like my ribs are down, and so my head is hanging out a little too far. It's not much, and I can speak just fine, but I can tell there's a little bit of extra effort happening. Whereas if I lifted my rib cage up a little bit and I rolled my shoulders back and I released that extra tension, no, I don't open my mouth very much naturally. And so I kind of have to work at it a little bit. I have to remind myself that if I open my mouth a little more and relax these muscles here, by just opening my mouth, I can give my body a signal that it's safe to relax these chewing muscles, to relax your tongue underneath, to relax these muscles, everything that's connected to your shoulders. When you release your shoulders, give them an actual directive, not just relax your shoulders, because who knows what relaxed is at a certain point, because most of us hang out in this mode. And so we can say, yeah, I'm relaxed. This is my normal state. But if we actually give your body a movement to see how it can be more relaxed, then we're creating more space from places we didn't even realize could have more space. So we are finding ways and triggers to direct our body so that we find a better way of singing, and an easier way of singing in the long run, especially. But you can feel the effects in the here and now as well. So you can tell from what I just did. If you're watching the replay, I was kind of sitting like this and talking in my normal chill self. And then I lifted up my rib cage, put my shoulders back, reminded my body that my shoulders can relax, open my mouth a little more, just releasing that. Gave me more space in the golden tube that I call it. You want to keep the golden tube open. And you want to really release your ab muscles. Release those low belly muscles, your lower abdominals, so that you can trigger your brain into thinking, okay, we can relax, we can create space, we can open up in ways that I don't usually open up. And this is all just something you can do sitting. If you can do it standing up, it's even better, because when you're standing up, I'll show you, you can be in this place where if we stand like this, I don't know if you can tell, if we stand like this and sing, ah, it feels like automatically there's more work happening in here. But if I do the same thing, I lift up my ribs, shoulders back, feel some floaty space. I don't want to be stiff and aligned. I want to be floaty and aligned. And so if I can do that and create the space in here, automatically it's way easier, less tension in here. And by in here, I mean the neck muscles, the outer muscles, not the inner muscles. It just feels like my natural state. It feels so much easier. I highly recommend Googling the Alexander technique for singers. There's some really cool videos out there on it. It's basically the idea of how do we let the body do what it naturally knows how to do and break those bad habits that we've done over many decades for some of us. And that's mostly what I do with singers, is I help them break the habits that they've been super attached to, whether it was from a teacher a long time ago or just from how your body sits naturally, or from how you've been told that you need to sing from your diaphragm and you didn't know what that meant. And just our preferences and our traumas and our mental health and all of this stuff, because we're a whole human being, can contribute to how much space we give our voice. And I mean that in a literal and a figurative way. We can really trip ourselves up on how much trust we put in our voice and how much literal space we give our voice. And that is a thing that I talk about probably every day with singers, with myself included. I have to remind myself, if I'm singing something, if I'm recording something, if I'm rehearsing something, I have to remind myself, okay, there's a process to this. Like if I have a hard run that I want to do, I'm not just going to try it once or twice. And if I mess up and be like, well, F that run, it's not going in the song. What I can do is find a better way to do that works for my voice. Maybe change the key of the song. Maybe put the register switch in a different place. Maybe take another breath somewhere I didn't realize that I could do. And just by doing that reevaluation, you're giving yourself more space. You're giving yourself more allowance to be who you are, to sing how you sing. And it makes so much difference physically and mentally, which we all know are very intertwined. If you've listened to me ever, I talk about that all the time. And so a lot of it is thinking about, how can I let my body do this in the most natural, most open way possible. And a lot of times that means noticing your habits and finding a way to remind the body that it doesn't have to do that anymore. So when I sat up and I put my shoulders back, it wasn't just telling myself to relax my shoulders because there's tension there. It was reminding my body with movement that I can relax my shoulders and that I know how to do that. A lot of times we just force ourselves to do something. It's so easy for a voice teacher to say oh, relax your jaw. But if you don't know what that means or what it feels like, how are you going to do it correctly? A lot of times when I say, I'm so guilty of this, it's just so easy for me to say, oh, just relax this. And then the person over relaxes and pushes down to the point of extra tension still happening in there. So like if I say relax your jaw or relax your tongue, you can be the person who like pushes down because that feels like the opposite of what it was before, but it's really not full relaxation. So sometimes we have to move things in a different way. We have to really be in our body and give it a different way of thinking, a different visual. And sometimes visuals don't even really help. We need to just move and get into that state, that open place some other way. And so then we can feel the ease that we've been wanting, but our body had never experienced. So it didn't know how to find it. So hopefully that makes sense. So the whole goal of this whole conversation is how do we create more space inside our body, in turn creating space in here and outside of our body as well. Because the more space we create for our voice, the more space we create in the whole of our body, because to get to that point, we have to find space in the rest of our body. Because if you're just singing from here, you're not even thinking about where there's tension and over tightening in the other parts of your body. But it really is related. Like if you've ever taken any kind of classical singing lesson, you know that they tell you to breathe from your belly, and you need that extra relaxation down below. And they're talking about your ribs, and they're talking about the top of your head, and they're talking about your ears, and everything is so connected because we are a whole human, like I said. So if you remember nothing else I told you today, just feel into your own body. Like if you're sitting, just close your eyes. Be mindful of what's happening in your ribs. How can you create more space in your ribs? Not with holding, not with extra tension, but how can I open? Where else can I open? Where else can I create space in my shoulders? How can I open in my shoulders? How can I remind my body that it's okay to be in a different position than it's used to be relaxed and fully ready to go? Something I was talking about with a student is the breathing and the belly breath. And I talk about this sometimes. Like the belly breath is not just to fuel yourself up, it's to literally create the contrast in your abdominals so that you have something to push that air out, and you have the pressure building correctly underneath, and it's a correct alignment for everything else. So when you take a belly breath, and by that I mean relax your chest, relax your shoulders, put your hand on your low belly, and let your belly release so much that it expands. So you're creating extra space down low. I often think of it as sending breath to my toes. And if you're doing it right, you should feel just a little extra expansion in your belly and maybe a teeny little bit of expansion in your bottom ribs. And it's kind of like a lower torso expansion. And so when you do that, you're releasing your lower abdominal muscles, you're releasing your obliques, you're releasing your diaphragm down, which by the way is an involuntary muscle. So all of this is just pushing everything out of the way for your diaphragm to come down, which I think of as the real pulling back the arrow. So your abdominals are the ones doing the work. The diaphragm is pulling back on the bow. And so then when you are about ready to go sing, to make noise, you have that pulled back, you have that space for the action to happen. Like if you pulled back a bow this much, there would be very little kinetic energy that's able to happen. Like it wouldn't go very far, right? And in singing, that means that if we're trying to sing a big note, these muscles are going to try and get involved and try and make that happen because you didn't give it enough fuel underneath. You didn't pull back the bow far enough. So when I take my belly breath, you're creating the space in your body and you're pulling back the bow by releasing those muscles. And so when you go to sing from that expanded place, your obliques can get involved, those outer ab muscles. your low belly muscles can get involved. Your diaphragm is doing its thing involuntarily. It's just it moves as the abs contract, and it's helping push the air out from the lungs in a controlled way, which is what we're all looking for. We're looking for a way to sing a constant, controlled tone, but the word controlled is not what we're going for here. I don't like the word control because it feels like too much holding on. It feels like we're manipulating things, like we're forcing something, and it feels stiff, and that's not what we want. We want the open and the close. We want this forever moving feeling inside your body, in everywhere, not just in your lungs and your low belly muscles. We want this forever expanding and contracting. We want the flowiness, and we want to be loose enough in our alignment to be able to expand and contract and have that pulling back of the bow that is your abs on your diaphragm. And so when you go to sing, you have the room, literal space in your body, as well as room in your lungs to let the air out quickly. And so you're not trying to force anything from these muscles, which should be just your steering wheel. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you remember nothing else, just think, how can I create more space in my body? Where else can I release more? And we're not going for a forced relaxation. We're going for a release and a flowy feeling, a floaty feeling. So you can be open and ready to go. I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago too, like the golden tube idea. This is your golden tube right here. Your whole system, the whole vocal mechanism is like a golden tube, and you don't want to pinch that tube off anywhere. So when you're breathing in, you're not only pulling back the bow of the diaphragm with the ab movement, but you are opening these little areas in your body to let the air in quicker. And you're also releasing all of these external muscles that like to get in the way all the time. And so we're finding this place where at the top of our inhale, this is open and relaxed because we allowed it to be on the inhale. And so when you go to sing, it's automatically going to be so much easier and freer on your voice because you created this space in your neck muscles and your laryngeal muscles. And so when you go to sing, there's not this, right? Because we were breathing in through a closed tube, which is what a lot of people do. When I tell them to take a deep breath, they suck in and they close it up because it feels like you're doing more, but it is really not. You're really not doing much of anything. You're making it harder for your body to take in air. You're closing off your tube so that when you start to sing, you're singing from a closed tube, which is never going to feel good. It's always going to sound like, right? So many, many benefits in finding the space in your body, but the abdominals and the diaphragm is one kind of bow mechanism that we're doing. This is another one. We just want to keep that golden tube open. And if you're doing this right, then this is not going to feel like it needs to get involved in order to manipulate those notes in doing anything. If you're doing this right, you have that space and you can sing from a very flowy aligned place. So we're creating space all the time. We're not judging ourselves for the habits that we have created over many years that other people may have instilled in us, that we may have just like absorbed from watching other people sing. That's a whole thing that, like, we're this generation of being raised on singing competition shows, and we watch how other people sing and we think it needs to look that hard. You see these pop stars going, they're tensing up their body and they're in weird ways. So we do that. We tense up and we make sure that we are working as hard as we see them working because we think that's what it is. When really it's not a good place to start from. You can get there eventually. A lot of that is self-direction, I think, and they have learned, these pop stars and these professional singers have learned how to do it on the outside without it affecting this. But you have to learn how to let it not affect this first, if that makes sense. And this is what vocal training is for. over a little bit of time. It takes time, like months, sometimes years. It depends on how present you are when you're singing and how well you are working at learning your own habits and learning what you have been taught and what you have developed over time, and how can we focus on letting that be just a thing that we used to do instead of this is who I am, this is how I feel like I have to get that note out. You know what I mean? So yeah, space, relaxation, release. That's how I think of singing. If you can get to a point where you can train your body to always go for the ease, then you're going to be golden. Because if you trust yourself and trust your sound, then there's none of that extra overexertion that needs to happen in your mind. So really, it's just brain training and body training. That's what I tell people I do all the time. People think being a voice teacher is like this magical, mystical thing. And yes, my company is called Vocal Magic, but really it's about you doing that magic. It's about you learning your own voice. It's about you being very present when you're singing. It's about you knowing your habits. It's about you coming to grips with what's going on in here. And if you want to watch my talks about the gremlin, I have many of them. You can go back and search in this Magic Sessions series. But yeah, there's a lot going on in here, but don't let it be overcomplicated, because it's really not. It takes time to practice getting out of these habits and finding that space when you're not used to it. But it really is, once you're committed to that, once you're committed to the ease and the trust in yourself and your voice, then you can get anywhere you want to go when you're singing. It takes time, of course, to practice and integrate these things and to get those gremlins separated from you and yourself, so you can stop believing all the things that they're telling you, mostly that you're not good enough in some shape or form. And then we can work really with the body on creating space. And then the nervous system comes in many other ways, and I talk about that quite often too. But highly recommend looking up the Alexander technique for singers if you're curious, as well as Muscle Music, which is an app created just for performers dealing with this mental health, this nervous system regulation stuff. Ruby Rose is awesome. She's incredible. She's got so many videos that she talks about this stuff as well. Super excited to actually collaborate with her soon. So yeah, if you have any questions, I can hang out for another 5 minutes. Thank you for being here. Also, you can just put them in the chat and I will either make a video or answer you later on. But if you are new to me and my coaching, I'm here. My DMs are always open for if you have questions. I have this awesome little mini ebook that you can get in my bio if you haven't gotten that yet. It's really a helpful way to start changing how we think about singing and how we approach singing in the body and the mind. And it goes more into depth with breathing and all that. So I highly recommend getting that. It's free, link in the bio. And if you want more than that, just DM me and let me know. I've got some big changes coming in this new year. Vocal Magic is my 6-month signature program. Some things are shifting and changing with that, most likely. As it stands now, it's a 6-month, very intimate group container. I'm turning it into something a little bit more accessible in the new year. So if you're interested in that, you still get a bunch of access to me, a bunch of live calls. It is still going to be a group program, but I'm switching up how I do it, and I want more people to be able to have access to me and this really cool work that I think I'm doing, combined with a couple other really amazing voice teachers in this mental health mindset focused mind, body, spirit kind of space, because not everybody does that. A lot of voice teachers out there are just teaching technique, and that's great. But for me, it was not enough. I needed more. I needed more layers. And so that's what I do with all my students. So if you're interested in doing the next iteration of Vocal Magic, send me a question in the chat. Put an emoji in the chat. I will get back to you, and I will let you know what's happening with that. As far as through the end of the year, it's already December 6th, so not a lot is happening. If you're interested in private coaching, I still have a couple spaces open, probably in my private studio. So let me know if you're up for that kind of thing. I'm always here for you. I also have this amazing community of singers, other singers like you who are dealing with the same stuff. I post live videos. I post these in there every weekend, so there's a whole archive of them. I do workshops pretty often, once every month or two. And there's a group of people in there who are aspiring singers just like you. It's pretty cool to have that community, to have other people cheering you on, watching your videos that you post and saying, oh my God, you're so amazing. You're better than you think you are, which is mostly the case for everybody. So we help each other get out of those gremlin states. It's really good for co-regulation, accountability, motivation. So if you're curious about that, let me know and I'll send you the link. All right. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you very soon.